I'm Gloria. The other night, I was in an Uber when the driver suddenly locked all the doors. I was terrified, thinking I was about to be kidnapped. My heart was pounding, and I was seconds away from calling the police. But then, just 5 minutes later, 3 police cars surrounded us. That's when I realized this stranger had saved me from something far worse than I could have ever imagined. Let me take you back to that fateful night. I'm a 24-year-old woman. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other. My parents were hard-working people. My father was a strict but kind man who worked long hours at a factory. My mother was warm-hearted and always there to support me. After graduating from college, I moved to the city to pursue my dreams. I got a job as a bartender at a trendy downtown club called Neon Pulse. Neon Pulse is the kind of place that gets packed on weekend nights. The music is loud, the dance floor is always crowded, and customers keep asking for one more drink right when we're trying to close. I've been working there for about 9 months. The job isn't glamorous, and the hours are tough, but the tips are good. I need the money to pay off my student loans while I figure out what I really want to do with my life. That particular Saturday night in late October was incredibly exhausting. The club was jam-packed. We were short-staffed because 2 of our servers called in sick. I was running around non-stop from 7 p.m. until we finally closed at 1:30 a.m. By the time I finished all my closing duties, counted my tips, which were $260 that night, not bad at all, and helped clean up, it was almost 2 a.m. I was dead tired. My feet were killing me from standing in high heels for 7 hours straight. All I wanted was to get home, take a hot shower, and collapse into bed. Normally, my roommate Lily picks me up after my late shifts. She's a great friend. She works from home, so she doesn't mind staying up late. But earlier that evening, she texted me saying she had a really bad case of the flu and couldn't even get out of bed, let alone drive across town to pick me up. I felt sorry for her, but I understood. My car was in the shop getting the engine repaired, so I had no choice but to order an Uber. I stood outside the club entrance on the side street where staff usually exit. During operating hours, this street is bustling with people. But once the club closes, it becomes eerily quiet and dark. Usually, our head bouncer, Jake, waits outside until all the female staff leave safely. But that night, his dog got sick, and he had to rush it to the vet around midnight. So, I was all alone on that empty street, with only the dim streetlights and the distant sound of traffic from the main road a few blocks away. I pulled out my phone and requested an Uber. The app showed me my driver's information. His name was Henry Thompson. He had a 4.8-star rating with over 3,500 completed rides, and he was driving a silver Toyota Camry. The app said he'd arrive in 5 minutes. I waited, checking my phone every few seconds. I felt a little nervous being alone, but I told myself I was just being paranoid. This was a relatively safe neighborhood, and nothing bad ever happened here. When the silver Toyota pulled up to the curb, I could see the driver through the windshield. He was a white man in his early 50s, wearing glasses and a simple blue sweater. He had a friendly face, a bit tired, which made sense considering it was 2 a.m. He looked completely normal and non-threatening. I opened the back door and slid into the seat. The car smelled faintly like lemon air freshener mixed with a hint of coffee. I said, "Hi, I'm Gloria, and I'm going to Elmwood Apartments." Henry nodded, confirmed my destination on his phone mounted to the dashboard, and pulled away from the curb. Soft jazz music played quietly from his speakers. I settled into my seat, pulled out my phone, and started texting Lily to check how she was feeling. I also started counting my tips again. As we drove, my apartment was about 15 minutes away from the club, and the route usually took us through the industrial district, which was always deserted at night. For the first few minutes, everything seemed normal. I was scrolling through my phone, half paying attention to the route, when I noticed Henry kept glancing up at his rear view mirror, not at me, but at the road behind us. At first, I didn't think much of it. Drivers check their mirrors all the time. But then I noticed his hands were gripping the steering wheel tighter than before, and he kept looking back every few seconds like he was watching something specific. Suddenly, he made a turn that definitely wasn't on the route to my apartment. I looked up from my phone, confused. I said, "Excuse me, I think you just missed the turn back there." Henry didn't answer right away. He made another turn, then another, taking us deeper into an industrial area I didn't recognize at all. My heart started beating faster. I sat up straighter and said, "Hey, where are you going? This isn't the way to my apartment." That's when I heard it, a loud mechanical click as all 4 car doors locked simultaneously. The sound made my stomach drop. I immediately grabbed the door handle and pulled hard, but it wouldn't budge. The door was completely locked. Panic shot through my entire body like electricity. I said, "Unlock these doors right now or I'm calling the police." My hand was already reaching into my purse for my phone. When Henry finally spoke, his voice was urgent but trying hard to stay calm. He said, "Please just listen to me for 1 second. Don't get out of this car. Don't try to jump out. Just trust me for 5 minutes. I know exactly how this looks, but you're in serious danger right now, and I'm trying to help you." My mind immediately went to every horrible story I'd ever heard about ride-share drivers attacking passengers. I said, "I don't know what you're planning, but I have pepper spray in my purse, and people know exactly where I am right now." Henry shook his head quickly and said, "I'm not trying to hurt you. I promise you that. There's a car that's been following us since the moment I picked you up from your work. A black SUV with no front license plate. They've been staying exactly 3 car lengths behind us this entire time, matching every single turn I make. When I slow down, they slow down. When I speed up, they speed up. That's not normal driving behavior. That's deliberately following someone." I felt my throat tighten. I turned around in my seat and looked through the back window. Sure enough, there was a black SUV behind us in the distance, its headlights cutting through the darkness. My voice came out shaky when I said, "Maybe they're just going the same direction we are. Maybe it's just a coincidence." Henry said, "I've been driving for Uber for 7 years now. I've taken defensive driving courses and security awareness training. I know what it looks like when someone is tailing another vehicle. I started testing them about 4 minutes ago by taking random turns that make no sense, and they're still right behind us. Somebody is following you, and based on their behavior, I really don't think they have good intentions." I felt my stomach twist into painful knots. I said, "Why would anyone follow me? I'm nobody special. I'm just a bartender." Henry glanced at me in the rear view mirror, and his eyes were filled with genuine concern. He said, "I don't know why, but I've already called 911. I called them 3 minutes ago. They're sending police officers to intercept us right now. The dispatcher told me to keep driving. Don't stop the car for any reason and don't let you out of this vehicle until police arrive on the scene. That's why I locked the doors. Not to trap you or hurt you, but to keep you safe inside this car where I can protect you." I didn't know whether to believe him or not. Every instinct in my body screamed that being locked inside a car with a strange man at 2 a.m. was dangerous. But something about the fear in Henry's voice and the way his hands were shaking slightly on the steering wheel made me look back at that SUV again. It was still there, maintaining that exact same distance behind us. Never getting closer, but never falling back either. I said, "How long until the police get here?" Henry said they told him approximately 5 minutes from when he called. "So maybe 2 more minutes now." He said, "Just please stay calm and stay in the car with me. We're going to get through this together." Those next 2 minutes felt like the longest 2 minutes of my entire life. Henry kept driving through the industrial district, making turns, but never stopping, never slowing down enough to let the SUV get any closer to us. I kept my eyes glued to that black vehicle behind us, watching its headlights follow our every move. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold my phone. I texted Lily, even though I knew she was sick. I typed out, "Something weird is happening in my Uber. Driver says someone is following us. Police are coming. I'm really scared." I hit send and watched the message go through, praying that if something bad happened to me, at least someone would know. I checked the time on my phone obsessively. Every second dragged on forever. Henry kept glancing between the road ahead and his rear view mirror, and I could see sweat forming on his forehead, despite the air conditioning running in the car. He said, "Just a little longer. They should be here any second now." Then, at exactly 2:05 a.m. I saw red and blue flashing lights appear from two different directions. 3 police cars came speeding toward us from different streets, their sirens wailing, and they positioned themselves to box in both Henry's Toyota and the black SUV that had been following us. It was like something out of an action movie, except this was real, and my heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might explode out of my chest. The moment the police cars surrounded us with their lights flashing everywhere, Henry immediately pulled over to the side of the road and put the car in park. He reached over and unlocked all the doors. The click sound made me jump. He turned around to look at me and said, "Stay in the car until the police officers tell you it's safe to get out." "Okay, just stay put." I nodded, unable to form words. I watched through the back window as 4 police officers jumped out of their vehicles with their hands on their weapons, surrounding the black SUV. The SUV's brake lights glowed bright red in the darkness. For a terrifying moment, I thought whoever was driving might try to speed away or do something crazy, but the vehicle just sat there. Then slowly the driver's side door opened. A police officer shouted loudly, "Show me your hands. Get out of the vehicle slowly with your hands where I can see them." I watched as a man stepped out of the SUV. He was wearing all dark clothing, in his late 30s, and he had his hands raised above his head. 2 officers immediately rushed toward him while shouting commands I couldn't quite hear. One officer pushed him forward against the side of the SUV and handcuffed him, while another officer started searching the vehicle with a flashlight, leaning inside and looking around carefully. A female police officer walked over to Henry's car and tapped on his window. Henry lowered the window, and the officer said, "Are you the driver who called in this incident?" Henry nodded and said, "Yes, ma'am. My name is Henry Thompson. I'm the Uber driver, and this is my passenger, Gloria." The officer leaned down slightly to look at me in the back seat. She said, "Are you okay? Are you hurt? Did anyone harm you in any way?" I shook my head because my voice didn't seem to be working properly. She said, "I need both of you to step out of the vehicle so we can take your statements and figure out exactly what happened here tonight." Henry got out first, and I opened my door on shaky legs. The moment I stood up, I felt dizzy. All the adrenaline that had been keeping me alert suddenly started to fade, and I felt weak and cold, even though it was a warm October night. Another officer, a Caucasian man who introduced himself as Officer Miller, approached me with a notebook in his hand. He said, "Can you tell me where you were tonight and where you were heading when you got into this Uber?" I explained about working at Neon Pulse, about finishing my shift late, about ordering the ride home because my roommate was sick and my car was broken. Officer Miller wrote everything down carefully. He said, "And you didn't notice anyone following you before you got into the vehicle?" I said no. I had no idea anyone was following me at all until my driver told me. Miller nodded and said, "Okay, just stay right here for a moment." I watched as Officer Miller walked over to where the other officers were standing near the black SUV. They were pulling things out of the vehicle and laying them on the ground. And even from where I stood, I could tell something was very wrong based on how the officers' body language changed. They started moving faster, talking into their radios with more urgency, and one officer kept shaking his head like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. After a few minutes, an officer walked quickly over to Miller and said something quietly that I couldn't hear. But Miller's expression went from calm to serious instantly. He walked back over to me and said, "I need to ask you something very important. Have you noticed anyone watching you recently? Anyone following you home from work or showing up places where you normally go? Any strange encounters with people you don't know or weird messages online?" I thought about it carefully and said no. Nothing like that at all. I would have noticed if someone was following me, right? I asked, "Why are you asking me this?" Miller hesitated for a moment like he was trying to figure out how to tell me something difficult. Then he said, "We found photographs in that vehicle. Multiple photographs of you. Some of them were taken tonight outside your workplace. Some are from other nights over the past several weeks. There's also a notebook with detailed information about you, including your work schedule, your home address, and notes about your daily routine and habits." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. All the air went out of my lungs. I said, "What do you mean photographs of me? Who is that man? I've never seen him before in my entire life." Miller said, "We're running his identification right now to find out who he is, but based on what we found in his vehicle, it's clear that you've been stalked for at least several weeks, possibly longer. You really never noticed him before? Never saw him hanging around your work or your apartment?" I shook my head, feeling sick to my stomach. I said, "I swear I've never seen that person. I had no idea anyone was watching me or following me. How is that even possible?" Miller said, "Unfortunately, stalkers can be very good at staying hidden and blending into crowds." He asked me to sit in the back of one of the police cars with the door open while they continued processing the scene and gathering evidence. I sat there feeling numb, watching officers take photos of everything, bag up items from the SUV, and talk to Henry, who was giving his statement to another officer. After about 15 minutes, Miller came back with a tablet computer in his hands. He said, "I need to show you something, but I want you to prepare yourself because it's going to be very disturbing." He pulled up a folder of photos that had been taken from the stalker's phone. Image after image of me leaving work, walking to different Uber pickups, sitting in coffee shops on my days off, buying groceries, going into my apartment building. There had to be at least 60 photos, maybe even more. Some were taken from far away across the street with what must have been a zoom lens. Others were taken much closer, like the person had been standing just a few feet away from me. In some of the photos, I was looking right at the camera, but I had no memory of seeing this person or having my picture taken. My hands started shaking so violently that I had to clench them into fists to make it stop. I said, "I don't understand any of this. Why would someone do this to me? What did I do wrong?" Miller said, "You didn't do anything wrong at all. This isn't your fault. Unfortunately, stalkers often fixate on victims completely randomly or for reasons that only make sense in their own minds. But here's what concerns us the most." He swiped to another image on the tablet. It was a screenshot from the Uber app showing my ride request from tonight, including the exact pickup location outside Neon Pulse and my home address as the destination. Miller said, "This man somehow had access to your ride-share account information. He knew exactly when and where you'd be requesting a ride tonight. He knew you'd be alone and vulnerable. If your driver hadn't noticed him following and hadn't taken immediate action to protect you, this man would have known exactly where you live and exactly what time you'd be arriving home alone at 2 a.m. with nobody around to help you." The full reality of how close I had come to something terrible hit me all at once, like a wave crashing over my head. I started crying right there in the back of that police car. Not loud dramatic sobs, but quiet tears that just kept streaming down my face as my body finally released all the fear and shock I'd been holding. Inside, Officer Miller handed me a small packet of tissues and sat down next to me. He said, "You're safe now. He can't hurt you anymore. We're placing him under arrest tonight on multiple charges, including stalking, criminal harassment, unlawful surveillance, and possession of tools with intent to commit a crime. When we searched his vehicle thoroughly, we found items that strongly suggest he was planning to escalate his behavior very soon. We found a knife, rope, duct tape, and latex gloves. Based on the evidence and his behavior tonight, you were potentially just hours away from a very dangerous situation. Another officer brought Henry over to where I was sitting. He looked exhausted and deeply worried, and when he saw me crying, his whole face softened with concern. He said, "Are you going to be okay? I'm so sorry you had to go through something this terrifying." I wiped